for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk facts.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
Playing on the car ride, play it when you lounge. X and O, you know that we can hold it down. Shout out to my man Sammy, got it off the ground. And to all the listeners tuned in right now, got debates, analysis, and speculation. This is sports talk for the new generation. You know where to find us, got a reputation. Sick podcast, your #1 sports destination.
Giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K is the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk back. S-I-C-K,
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 S-I-C-K.
all in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K is the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk facts.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
Playing on the car ride, play it when you lounge. X and O, you know that we can hold it down. Shout out to my man Sammy, got it off the ground. And to all the listeners tuned in right now, got debates, analysis, and speculation. This is sports talk for the new generation. You know where to find us, got a reputation. Sick podcast, your #1 sports destination.
Giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K is the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk back. S-I-C-K,
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 S-I-C-K.
S-I-C-K.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast. With Tony Marinaro.
55 seconds left in the penalty, a minute and 27 seconds left in regulation time. Boston 4, Montreal 3. Lafleur coming out rather gingerly on the right side. He gives it into Lemaire, back to Lafleur.
The sickest Montreal Canadiens podcast.
You're in the ball!
Sports entertainment like no other.
Rejoint, on lui fait perdre la rondelle, une passe devant. Et c'est le dégagement et ce sera la victoire des Canadiens. Stanley pour les Canadiens, le 23e de l'histoire.
You found the dogs! John, you found the dogs! He found the dogs! And all together, they worked a young team to the top. And now, a 24th Stanley Cup banner will hang from the rafters of the famous Forum in Montreal. The Canadiens win the Stanley Cup!
Brought to you by Energy Transportation Group. Driven to be different. La Vida Tibi. Embrace your true nature. And Playground, your premier gaming destination. It's gonna be sick.
Good Tuesday evening, everyone. My name is Matt Ohayon on the Sick Podcast with you. Tony, as you know, is out in Portugal, I believe. He's watching his son play soccer. So he said, hey, I just want to do 3 nights a week this week. No problem, Tone. I got your back. You've had my back millions of times before, and you're going to have it again later in September, but you don't know it yet, and you're only going to know it if you're watching right now. Anyways, the Sick Podcast is brought to you by Energy Transportation Group. They've been named by Deloitte and CIBC as one of Canada's best managed companies, the country's leading business award recognizing innovative and world-class companies. The best managed Canadian companies designation fuels Energy's purpose of creating progress for our customers, our employees, and our communities. Join a winning team and check out Energy's career page for available opportunities. Also brought to you by Playground. Don't miss Playground's August Million Poker Series from August 23rd to September 4th with $1 million in guaranteed prize pools, 7 championship ring events, and a $600,000 guaranteed main event. Located just over the Mercier Bridge, only minutes away from downtown Montreal. Playground. And by La Bittt at Tibi, brewed in Quebec, and a winner of a dozen international awards, La Bittt at Tibi offers quality microbrewery beers made with premium ingredients for everyone's taste. La Bittt at Tibi, embrace your true nature. And of course, finally, by Murphy Clinic, who are an aesthetic clinic specializing in medical aesthetic care. They offer permanent laser hair removal as well as a wide range of treatments for skin problems such as acne, rosacea, fine lines, and more. They currently have 2 clinics, one located in Montreal Shop Angus and the second one on the North Shore in Terrebonne. They're also opening soon in Quebec City. Visit murphyclinic.ca or on Instagram at Murphy Clinic. All right, so as you know, or as you may not know, Tony had a very special guest last night on his episode of the Sick Podcast. He had Dominic Ducharme last month, hired by the Vegas Golden Knights as an assistant coach. So lots of interesting tidbits in there. Who better to talk about some of these things and more than the Montreal Gazette's Stu Cowan. Stu, how you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you, Matt?
I'm doing fine. It's weird. I almost said, because, you know, you're my guest, it's Tuesday night. I almost said good Friday evening, everyone. It's weird. I mean, it's a weird zone, but glad to have you on Tuesday evening. So did you catch any of the episode?
I did. I watched the whole thing. It was a good interview by Tony. Kudos to him for getting Dominic Ducharme on. And it was a lot of interesting stuff there. I'm happy for Dominic Ducharme. My dealings with him when he was head coach of the Canadiens, he was a good guy to deal with. He was a friendly guy with the media. He was fine. Things didn't work out for him with the Canadiens. I think he's in a better role now as an assistant coach. I think his personality, while he had a lot of success as a junior head coach, obviously winning Memorial Cup, winning Quebec Junior Championship, the success he had at the World Juniors. In the NHL, I just think his personality is probably better suited as an assistant coach. Pierre Gervais' book that he wrote, the former equipment manager, saying, it wasn't like Ducharme lost the room with the Canadiens. He said he never had the room. It's just his personality, I don't think, carried over to the NHL as far as getting guys, being able to sell what he was trying to sell and getting guys to fully buy in. It just didn't work out. Maybe it'll work out if it becomes a head coach somewhere else down the line with what he would have learned here. But from a personal standpoint, I'm happy to see him land on his feet. He's obviously a good coach. You don't get to coach the Canadian World Junior team unless you know your stuff. And there's no doubt he knows his X's and O's. I think part of his problem, or a big part of his problem that led to his downfall, was just the ability to communicate with players, and maybe his inability to listen to them and take feedback from the players and maybe adjust things to his system when things weren't working and the players were telling him it wasn't working. Maybe a little bit too stubborn, a little bit too set in his ways, maybe a little bit of that sort of smartest guy in the room syndrome that, I know more than you guys do. But, life you live and learn. So I'm sure he learned lessons. He talked about that with Tony. Things that he said he would have done different, things that he's learned that he'll move forward. But I'm not surprised to see him end up back in the NHL with an assistant coaching job in Vegas, and I'm happy for the man.
Yeah, me too. I'm very happy for him because he was kind of put in a bad position, by Marc Bergevin, by the team. But what the main thing that you said that we're totally on the same page is he wasn't able to communicate well with his players. And while I never asked him a question or interviewed him, plus it was COVID, so it was even more distance. But the one thing that always came across was, even with the media, as nice as he could have been, it just came off like he had a hard time communicating. There was a language barrier, but just based off that interview yesterday, that was the biggest thing I took away, is this guy improved his communication skills like tenfold, and that's going to help him dramatically.
Well, he wasn't as comfortable like Marty St. Louis from day one as head coach was so comfortable dealing with the media in front of the television cameras, in front of the notepads, everything. He has a comfort level. He has a confidence in himself that, Dominic Ducharme's confident in himself, but it doesn't come off the way it does with Marty. And, the players and management talked about when Marty St. Louis was named, the speech he gave in the locker room the day he was named coach, the players like, wow, like they bought in right away. It obviously helps when you're a Hall of Fame player. You come into the room, you have instant credibility. But, when the Canadians hired Dominic Ducharme, and I wrote a column the day he was hired, they hired him to be the next head coach. They knew one day Claude Julien was going to get fired. They figured they knew Jeff Molson's made it very clear the head coach has to be bilingual. They knew, when they fired Michel Therrien, it's sort of a domino effect. Claude Julien got fired by the Bruins. Things weren't going great with the Canadians. Claude Julien was the best bilingual head coach out there available. If we're going to make a move, now's the time. He's available, and everything sort of fell together. And I don't think they wanted to get back in that position again. So they wanted to have a qualified bilingual potential head coach in the system, ready to go when that time would come when Claude Julien would be fired, because all coaches are fired. And they ended up, they had Dominic Ducharme and they had Joel Bouchard. They brought both of those guys in as 1A and 1B as a possible replacements for Claude Julien. But again, I just think, Ducharme had been around the team, but his personality, he was much more comfortable with Tony in the interview he did last night. Sort of like two buddies talking. While he was good with the media and answered questions and was polite and respectful and everything else, he just didn't have that comfort level, and he didn't have that Marty St. Louis walks into a room, he can own a room, and Dominic Ducharme didn't have that. His personality just doesn't have that, and he wasn't a Hall of Fame hockey player. That helps right away when you walk into any room. Marty St. Louis, his credentials as a player speak for themselves. But the players didn't buy in 100% with Dominic Ducharme. Excuse me, and they have bought in 100% with Marty St. Louis right from day one. And it's also different systems. I mean, you look at, Tony asked him about Cole Caulfield, and night and day, the player Cole Caulfield was under Dominic Ducharme and the player that he was under Marty St. Louis. And Dominic made some good points. Cole did injure his shoulder in the red-white game when he slipped in the warm-up. There was COVID. Cole was sent home for COVID. There was a whole lot of things with Dominic Ducharme. At the end of the day, he did get his team to the Stanley Cup final. There was a lot of things involved with it. I said with COVID, they shouldn't have even made the playoffs that year, the way the schedule went and everything else. But again, things didn't work out for him here in Montreal. But I think he's in a really good position to succeed now with defending Stanley Cup champions. And they obviously think that he can bring something to help that organization that was the best team in the league last year.
There's a couple things there. And, I said it earlier, and I Listen, I'm not one to make excuses for coaches, for team. I'm not going to work for a team, so it doesn't matter. I'm not one to make excuses, but like I did say, he wasn't exactly put in the best position to succeed. And, that's pretty much highlighted. I forget if it was, I'm pretty sure he said it on Tony's podcast, if he did have him, but he said it in the media for sure, was Jeff Molson. He said, like, yeah, after the Stanley Cup final, we kind of knew that this was a problem team. Like, this was a flawed team, I think was the phrase he used. And they never really did anything to address that. So you have a flawed team already, and you can't take anything away from the Habs because, like you said, they made the Stanley Cup final. You can make the argument that they probably wouldn't have made the playoffs had it been a normal circumstance, but they did, and they made the final, and he brought them there. So those are the facts. It was a flawed team, and they didn't really do anything to address that. And then, he's kind of the fall guy because, the fan base kind of, they made the finals, but during that season, I mean, I remember being frustrated watching the Canadiens. They went through a crazy stretch of games with zero success up until Julien got fired, and they didn't really even seem to have that spark of, when you get a new coach. They didn't have that in the regular season. So it was interesting.
The other thing, they didn't, it was a flawed team. Then they also lost Carey Price and Shea Weber, which played a big role into that also into the next season.
And also, you can't really replace those guys, but it's almost like they didn't even make an effort. You brought in David Savard. All due respect to David Savard, he's not a future Hall of Famer like Shea Weber is. Yeah. So those are just like mitigating factors that I feel like I don't want to say he wasn't given a fair shake, but he was never even given a real full season.
No, and even the way they hired him. I mean, I remember before they fired Julien, they had a break in the schedule. I can't remember if it was Austin, whatever. And they had a break, and you figured that was the time to make a coaching change, and they didn't make it then. And then when they did make it, I mean, Dominic Ducharme talked about how he parked his car at the Bell Center, got on a plane as the assistant coach of the Canadiens, and when he came back like a week later, he was the head coach. He didn't even have like a full practice as head coach when they hired him. So they put him into a tough situation right off the bat. And the system he played. I mean, Jeff Petrie and Tony asked Dominic about that also. Jeff Petrie was sort of a vocal critic of it, but he was speaking. A lot of people put heat on Jeff Petrie for it, but he was speaking for the locker room. He was, also this team didn't have a captain. You have to remember that when Shea Weber left, they didn't name a captain. So there was no voice in the team, and Jeff Petrie took it upon himself to be that voice, and some people have criticized him for it, but the room, obviously the players weren't happy with the system they were playing. They didn't think it worked. They thought it needed changes. Ducharme wasn't making the changes they thought were necessary to make it work, and Petrie became the sort of the voice from the locker room for it. And if you've been around Jeff Petrie, I was around him quite a lot when he was at the Canadiens, that's not really his personality. He's sort of a quiet, more of a laid-back guy, but somebody had to speak up. And Jeff Petrie took it upon himself to be that guy. He was one of the assistant captains without a captain in the room. And I think that was another huge mistake Marc Bergevin made that didn't help Dominic Ducharme as a head coach, is that shadow of Shea Weber was still hanging. They knew he wasn't going to play again. And I don't understand why they didn't name a captain at that point. Even if it was a temporary captain, this guy's going to be our captain for this season, and then we're going to readdress it. It just seemed to be, they went into that season when, they lost two of their key players. They didn't have a leader, or their two key players. They didn't have the one leader in the room who was in charge. And I think a lot of guys were looking at each other. Should you speak up? Should I speak up? And it was just, it just became a mess. And, we remember that game against New Jersey when Montembeault got ran behind the net. Nobody did anything. Players, like, they had given up. They didn't care. And I remember Josh Anderson was after Dominic Ducharme's last game. He said, it's not fun coming to the rink anymore. We're not enjoying it. It's not fun. And if guys aren't having fun coming to the rink, they're not going to perform. It's like, if you're not having any kind of fun going to your job, you're not going to perform to the top of your level. And I think that might have been the last nail in the coffin for Dominic Ducharme as a head coach. Is like, look, these guys are starting. This is a young team. We need to rebuild. These guys aren't having any fun. They're not enjoying showing up at the rink. And now you look at last year, the guys really, they had fun showing up at the rink. They played that way. They played as a group of brothers. They battled for each other. They didn't have the talent to win a lot of games, but they won a lot of games they shouldn't have won, and they didn't give up in games that they should have got clobbered, whereas under Ducharme, at least at the end, they were getting clobbered at times. And the other thing with Ducharme too, Corey Perry played a huge role in that locker room as a leader. They also lost him. So you lose Carey Price, you lose Shea Weber, you lose Corey Perry. It's three really big pieces to that team that certainly didn't help Dominic Ducharme. But again, a lot of it comes on him himself too, because the system, the players didn't like the system. It wasn't working, and his unwillingness to adjust and change led to his downfall.
That's one thing that, and I'm happy you said that, because like, I don't want it to sound like we're absolving him of, that season, because that's not what we're doing here. One thing I will say is that I didn't love what he said about when Tony asked him about Cole Caulfield. I didn't love it. And the reason is because it's like he scored 1 goal in 30 games or something like that. And then it was almost instant. You saw the change in Cole Caulfield. So it's like you see there's kind of a disconnect there for me, because it's clearly there was something. I don't know what the reason was for it. Maybe he thought he wasn't ready when he clearly was, and that's an issue on its own. Or maybe he knew he was under the gun and he wanted to trust his veterans.
I think it was just the system he was playing. I think Cole was probably more focused on the system and where I have to be and defense, and as opposed to just playing. And for Marty St. Louis, it's a little easier for him too. It has been easier because he came in. We're rebuilding. We don't expect to make the playoffs. It's easier to say just let the kids play, right? Let Cole Caulfield go out, do your thing, go score goals. Don't worry about the mistakes you're going to make. It's a good way to develop players. It's easier to do that when management isn't their goal. They're not expecting you to make the playoffs. They're not expecting you to go to the Stanley Cup final. When management is expecting you to do that, it's different. And that was the situation that Ducharme was under. And it's sort of, Lax Newhook coming to the Canadiens now, talking about how in Colorado he didn't get much of an opportunity because he was one of the younger guys and he was on, not getting top 6 minutes. And if you made a mistake, so it's a different team with a different goal. So for Marty, Marty's had the advantage of the new management team coming in and saying we're rebuilding and allowing him to have more of a free-flowing system and allowing guys to make mistakes, whereas Ducharme wasn't so much in that position where he could allow Cole Caulfield to make mistakes. So when Marty St. Louis came in and basically told Cole Caulfield, just go play, score goals, go have fun, score goals, we'll correct stuff as we have to correct it, that lit the spark under him. But Ducharme was never really in that position where he could do that in a lot of ways. He couldn't just set him free because he was expecting to win games, and he was, they went to the Stanley Cup final, and Cole was a rookie, and you don't really, you don't have that faith in him as you do in the veteran guys. And that's most coaches in the NHL are like that, especially when you get to the Stanley Cup final, they trust in their veterans. But there's no doubt that the system Ducharme played and the style of hockey he wanted to play handcuffed a player like Cole Caulfield. And then when Marty St. Louis came in and took the handcuffs off him, excuse me, the results were instantaneous. I mean, he instantly became a different hockey player. And it goes back to what Josh Anderson was saying also. He was having fun. He was having fun coming to the rink. He was having fun scoring goals. Cole Caulfield, one of the real good quotes I like from Marty St. Louis, among many smart things he said, he says, I can't teach Cole Caulfield how to score goals. He's the natural goal scorer, but I can teach him how to get into positions where he can score more goals. And that's what Marty's whole system is about, is getting guys into positions where they're able to perform at their peak.
And again, that's just another interesting point, is that, he was so, it's interesting because we say that Cole Caulfield, it's probably because he was so focused on the system and he was so focused on playing defense.
And afraid to make a mistake.
And the thing is Ducharme, by all accounts, was, I don't know what he was in charge of with the Canadiens, but he was known as an offensive coach. So like, that's the interesting part. So maybe he was overcompensating for the fact that, okay, when I was assistant coach, I was in charge of offense. These guys know what they're doing. Now I got to really hammer home the message of playing defense, kind of thing. Maybe that was the case. I don't know, but he was hired to, and he said it on Tony's podcast yesterday. He's hired to work with the forward group. Yeah. And I think he's going to do a great job. I don't know what he has in mind. Obviously, he's not going to show his cards in there, but I think he's going to do a fantastic job there, because they got all the talent in the world, and they can play well, they did play. That's how they won the cup. That tough style of hockey, that old school fourth line energy line, and then the rest of the lineup get out there and score some goals. Like I think that'll suit him really, really well, and I think he's going to do great there.
Well, as you mentioned, known as offensive coach, it helps when you coach a Halifax junior team that won the Memorial Cup that had Nathan McKinnon and Jonathan Drouin. When Jonathan Drouin was an offensive star, it helps you become more of an offensive coach. You sort of coaches. Red Fisher used to always have a great line when teams are struggling. You'd say, "Show me the players." The coach is only as good as the players that he has. And Dominic Ducharme, especially after losing, as I mentioned before, Price and Weber and Corey Perry, he didn't have a whole bunch to work with. Whereas now, moving forward, Marty St. Louis, with all these young guys coming up, all these young prospects, he's going to have a lot to work with over the next few years. And it'll be the pressure on Marty is going to get a little bit more this season and the next season after, as far as, okay, now when you start winning, we've loved all these young kids coming and playing and having fun, and Cole Caulfield scoring goals. We need to start winning some games here too and get into the playoffs. So that pressure will build for Marty as things go along, and his willingness to allow guys to make mistakes and live and learn from them will get smaller.
That's always what I say is once that pressure starts to build, it's going to be really, really interesting to see how well this, instead of system, concept, adapts and how that's going to adapt into when, okay, it's no more pat on the back. Hey, let me show you this in the video room. Just don't do that again. When you really got to start cracking down on players, because he only really did that once, maybe twice last season, as far as I could remember, and that was effort based. But now we're gonna see execution based sooner or later.
Marty will be able to do that, I'm sure. You got to remember, this guy played for John Tortorella, and he loved John Tortorella. John Tortorella was one of his friends. He loved playing for John Tortorella. John Tortorella, you work hard, you play hard, you don't have a problem. Josh Anderson said the same thing, who also played for Tortorella. So he's played with tough coaches, Marty St. Louis. He knows what it's like for a coach to get tough, but he's also knows what it's like to be a young kid trying to get your feet in the NHL. And one of the things Marty said, and he's right, so I can relate to every player in the NHL. I've been undrafted. I've been placed on waivers and not claimed on waivers. I've been a fourth liner, a third liner, a second liner, a first liner, an all-star, the league MVP. He can relate to everything that every player, the position they're in. And I think that's one of the real strong points for him as a coach, especially in today's NHL or any pro sports, where so much about it is just communication and motivation. And I asked Marty last year, where do you put communication on your list of most important things as a coach? And he said, number one. And it really is in today's NHL. And he has that ability to communicate. And he has that ability. I'm sure he has that ability as things go on. He will be able to be more tougher on the guys and harder on the guys and less forgiving of their mistakes. But the good thing is they've got this whole group of guys, all 21, 22, 23, 24, all in the same age group, all coming up together with this coach and they're all going to grow up together, including Marty as a coach. They're all growing up together, and they're going to realize, okay, well, when he does start being hard on them, they're going to remember, like, yeah, he was good to me when I was young. And so you're going to want to listen to this guy and do what he's telling you to do. And we've already seen that. It goes back again to the credibility factor. He has the credibility that Ducharme just never seemed to have. As it was said in the book, it was like he didn't lose the room because he never had the room. And I saw that run to the Stanley Cup final. And I think we've discussed this before when Ducharme had COVID and Luke Richardson came in, and the Canadiens went on a bit of a roll there. And it was Ben Sherratt who said, we'd all skate through a wall for Luke Richardson. And I remember when he said that, I was like, that was, I was talking about Jeff Petrie being the spokesman for the room. That was sort of, nobody said that about Dominic Ducharme, that everybody in the team would skate through the wall for him, but everybody would for Luke Richardson. And now we see Luke Richardson in Chicago with a young team. It's interesting to see how they build going forward. They're both, Luke Richardson and Marty St. Louis are both, when Ken Hughes took over and Jeff Gorton, they said they wanted the modern day coach. And we were also like, well, what's a modern day coach? Well, Marty St. Louis is a modern day coach. Luke Richardson's a modern day coach. These are the guys in today's NHL, the Mike Keenans of the world, even the John Tortorellas of the world. It's tough in today's NHL with these younger kids to be that way and get them to listen and perform for you. They're more likely to just tune you out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. And, to bring it back to Dominic Ducharme, I think he can become that modern day coach. I don't think he was ready. I think the process was expedited way too fast. Because of what was going on with Claude Julien, they had to make a move.
Yeah.
And, with all the restrictions and whatnot, and especially if you hired him to be your next coach.
Yeah. And they did.
They just sped up the process, and how many times have the Canadians rushed a prospect through the rankings? Well, they rushed a coach through the rankings,
and being head coach of the Canadians, I mean, the pressure that it's unimaginable, the pressure that comes to being head coach, GM of the Canadians. If Dominic Ducharme's next job was head coach in Vegas or Carolina or somewhere like that, the pressure is not the same. I mean, the internal pressure is still there from management for you to perform, but you're not doing 3 news conferences a day in 2 languages and all the media obligations. And, I'm sure if you're head coach in Las Vegas, you can walk down the street and not be recognized most of the time. It's a different world. So he's experienced the most pressure you're ever going to face as an NHL head coach, including being in the Stanley Cup final, to whatever or wherever. If he does become a head coach in the NHL again, the pressure will not be as immense. And he's going to learn as an assistant coach now in Vegas under a different coaching system, a different management team, a different environment. I sort of chuckled when he told Tony, I won't miss shoveling snow in the winter. Living out there in Vegas is pretty sweet. But again, for Dominic Ducharme, I mean, he's as I said, you don't become head coach of the Canadian national junior team if you're not a good hockey coach and you don't know your stuff. But coaching in the NHL at the pro level is about so much more than that. It's about motivating and getting guys to buy in. I just watched recently the Netflix series on the Florida Gators, and I'm trying to remember the name of the head coach there.
Urban Meyer.
Urban Meyer, thank you. Yeah. And the stuff he would do to these guys in training camp and that. Then he went to the NFL. It didn't work, right? In junior or in university football, guys will do anything you tell them to do because you hold their future in their hands. If you want to go play pro hockey, this coach holds your future in your hands. You get to the pro ranks, it's a different story. Urban Meyer, you got to the pro ranks of Jacksonville, I believe it was, and pulled the hard ass act, and the players just tuned them out and said, I got a 3-year contract here. I'm going to be here longer than you. And it doesn't work.
Exactly.
It doesn't work. So that's sort of the thing is so much about today. In all pro sports, coaching is communicating and motivating players. And now Marty St. Louis is much better at that. And it just comes more naturally to Marty St. Louis. You walk into a room as a Hall of Fame hockey player, you have a little bit more confidence in what you're saying. And also Marty St. Louis has a ton of money in the bank already.
Yeah. Yeah.
If it doesn't work out and he gets fired, you can go back and nice house in Connecticut and play golf and spend time with his kids or get a job somewhere else. So it's not the same amount of pressure on him as there was on Dominic Ducharme. And from a financial standpoint, the Canadians paid him well. He was 3 years at $1.7 million, if I remember his contract was. So he got money, but it's that might even add to a bit more of his confidence moving forward too. He's not, when he first came in here, he come from coaching junior hockey to coaching the Canadians. It was a financial aspect to that too. So Dominic Ducharme, again, just to go back, I mean, I got along with him well when he was head coach. I think just what everybody in the media did, including Tony, obviously. And I'm happy to see him get another chance. And as I said, I just think he's much better suited as an assistant coach in the NHL than a head coach, at least for now.
And the last thing before I let you go is just another thing that came across to me was when he was talking about how during his time off, he was watching 2 hockey games a night. He was weighing his options of maybe going to the AHL, maybe going to Europe. This guy, I know we say that we have this thing where we say everyone in the NHL loves hockey. That's not true. We've seen many instances where someone just happens to be very good at hockey and said, I can make
Alexander Day.
Well, there you go. And, by all accounts, I had a player in my head. Hold on. Nathan Beaulieu. He was really good at hockey. He never really wanted to put in the work. So he clearly loves hockey. When he got fired, said, no, I'm not done. I want to get back into this. I need to I need to do what I need to do to get there. And I tip my cap to that, because that's it's very easy to say, maybe I got my money, I got my 1.7 million American dollars converted into Canadian.
Yeah.
Let me go screw off somewhere and I'll play golf the rest of my life. No, he likes it.
He's a hockey junkie. And most of these coaches are. And he talked about it with Tony, coaching the World Junior team. His year would start in July with the summer camp for the World Juniors. At Christmas, he didn't get a break. At Christmas, he was at the World Juniors. Then the season, it was a long, long season. It was the same when he was with the Canadians because of the COVID and that. So they're hockey junkies, these guys. They eat, live, and sleep hockey. And the coaches, and again, as I've said several times already, you don't become head coach of the Canadian national junior team unless you are 100% focused on hockey and you're consumed by it. And Dominic Ducharme was obviously consumed by hockey. It's his passion. He loves it. He knows the game. He knows his X's and O's. And again, I just think it's the communication and the willingness to listen to your players more. And maybe the reason he was stubborn with what he wanted to do is he thought that was the way maybe to keep the room. Like, I can't just let the players take over and have them running things. And I think he was maybe fighting that a little bit too. You go back, Jean Perron was a similar situation when they won the Cup in '86. There was a bunch of veterans in the room that were more or less running and coaching the team more so than he was. And I think it was a similar situation with him. And he just wasn't able, he wasn't able to be the voice in the room. Like Marty St. Louis is the voice in the room. Nick Suzuki's the captain. He's the voice with the players. But when Marty comes in and he speaks, everybody listens. Everybody pays attention. And I think that was the thing that Dominic Ducharme was really missing. And I say that line that he didn't lose the room because he never had it. I think it's that speaks volumes about his tenure as head coach of the Canadians.
Stu, thank you very much for joining me on this Tuesday. I was going to say, have a great weekend. I was so ready to say, have a great weekend. Oh, my God. Have a great rest of your week and enjoy the weekend that's coming ahead.
All right.
Long weekend.
You too. Have a good one.
All right. It's time for 6 Sports Cards.
6 Sports Cards. Presented by Sports La Tournade.
All right, Shane, producer Shane, you're going to have to put the graphic up so I could read it because I don't have it in the chat, unfortunately. There you go. 6 Sports Cards is presented to you by Sports La Tournade, sports cards, collectibles, and more. Visit the store at 1 Avenue de la Fabrique in Vaudreuil-Dorion. I'm not going to read the postal code. So, Tornado Chris, it's been a couple weeks. Got some questions on my mind. You want to talk to us, first of all, though, about license agreements in cards.
Yeah, I feel like it's just a good time to talk about that now. I will segue into something that's been in the news for weeks now, and it's a big hot topic. So I think we need to discuss that. So just, some people always ask me why is who makes this card and why. So not every sport has the same license agreement when it comes to sports cards. So if you go to the NHL boxes, you're dealing with Upper Deck. Everyone knows about Upper Deck because the license agreement with the NHLPA and Upper Deck, that is the number one. There's also Leaf, who makes hockey cards, but they don't have the license. So there's certain rules that they have to follow, and there's certain things that they can't do because they're not exclusive agreement.
So let me ask you this: is that why certain brands of cards are more expensive than others? That's got to be the reason, obviously, right?
Yeah. So each company has their subcategories or brands. So with Upper Deck, we talked about the Cup being the highest one, and then you have Black Diamond, and you have Trilogy and SP Authentic. Those are all lines within Upper Deck. But then you have products like Leaf that don't have the license agreement. They make cards and they make really nice cards, but there's certain things they can't do, which turns people off a little bit. Like the biggest example I can give you is they cannot have logos or like the team logos on the players' jerseys. So you'll get, you know, and it's the same thing for all sports. If you don't have the agreement with the Players Association, they can't put the logos of the team on the chest or on the helmet of the players. So that's one thing where people are kind of like, well, it's not the real jersey. It's not the real thing. It's, you know, and also when it comes down to making a card with patch, jersey, autographs, you can't get certain autographs, certain players sign with the exclusivity. So that's basically how it works on the market. So yeah, you're safer, a little bit better off to go with the number one, which in hockey would be Upper Deck.
So just to give a frame of reference, I guess, and if you don't know, you don't need to answer. Because I don't mean to put you on the spot, but like, let's say I got a Leaf Connor McDavid rookie card,
right?
And I have a Upper Deck, whatever series, we'll say Black Diamond, Upper Deck, Connor McDavid rookie card. What's a price difference there like?
So if you went equal set, like what you paid for your box, you know what? I'm going to take a guess because I don't know the real answer. That no one really knows because the prices change quite frequently. But I'm going to say, like, especially with Connor McDavid, you're probably looking at 3-4 times the price with an Upper Deck card versus a Leaf.
Mm-hmm. Okay,
and
there you go.
And then if you want to sell, the market is much wider to sell it after, because we sell every day. And I know that if I put a Leaf card out there, you have to really grind to find that buyer. And once you find them, keep them, because there's not as many as, say, Upper Deck.
So let's move on to the next topic. It's coming around the corner. I'm excited. You know what? Oh, go ahead.
You're excited for football. No,
yeah.
We need to bring this license agreement forward to the hot topic. So for baseball, we have Topps, who has now been sold to Fanatics. So now Fanatics has really been big into baseball already. They're already getting involved. They've brought a whole new aspect to trading cards. I've listened to a lot of their shows, a lot of their new thoughts on the game. They want to 10x everything in the next 5 years. So I don't know if you've watched a baseball game lately or any kind of MLB network, but you're gonna see a lot of Fanatic stuff. They were at the All-Star game, guys opening packs on the bench during the game, interviewing with Fanatics. They started putting patches on the guys' jerseys this year. All the rookies had a NHL debut logo put on their jersey. All those logos are going into cards, and those are one-of-one cards, one-of-one rookie cards, things like that. So their Fanatics is they're trying to bring more fans. That's where they want to target, is to go get more fans and bring more fans into collectibles. And that's how they're doing it. So that's in baseball. You're going to hear Fanatics. As far as basketball and football goes, I'm going to put those in the same basket, because for the last, I don't know how many years, it's always been Panini. Panini has been the football and basketball go-to license agreement. They still have a 3-year contract with the NFLPA. This is where the news has broke. It's gotten silly over the last little while. Fanatics now signed license agreement with the NFLPA starting in 3 years from now. Well, it was starting 3 years from now. Since then, Panini has decided to sue Fanatics because they were after the whole law taking over the market, the exclusivity,
monopoly.
The monopoly. That's exactly it. So Panini sued Fanatics. It took about a week for the dust to settle. Then the news broke that Fanatics was countersuing Panini. That took about, I want to say, another week or two. And then the NFLPA announced that they were terminating their agreement immediately with Panini. So now it's a mess, and I can't even tell you today who is it? Fanatics? Is it Panini? Who is it going to be in the future? Is there even going to be football cards next year? No, all this is in the air right now. So it's a big mess because the season is about to start. A lot of the products for this year are starting to come out. Now, the problem with that is that Panini started to put their products out, and quickly we noticed the top 3-4 rookies were not there, and there was no signatures. And then it was found that no, they didn't sign with Panini, they signed with Fanatics. So for the rest of this year, you could be opening Panini boxes without your number 1, 2, 3 rookie autographs in there, which is a huge problem, and it's going to hurt them a lot. So it's a mess.
I feel like the one thing that'll, maybe, just maybe help Panini in that case for this year, I'm saying, with those rookies, is that this isn't supposed to be like a wow Hall of Fame generational class. So they have that going for them, I guess. But yeah, that sounds like a mess.
You know that Fanatics is also the next hockey jersey, right? In the NHL.
Yep.
So they're
yeah, go ahead.
They are really taking over everything.
They're fine. Their football stuff in terms of, like, I buy a lot of football merch.
Yeah.
It's nice. With hockey, man, they really, it's like they put an intern on there, and it's like they don't want to bother with the hockey gear because, like, their hats, this is just purely anecdotal, it's their hats, their t-shirts, it's just so unoriginal. It's so compare the championship hats from the Super Bowl and the NBA championship to what the NHL got. It's embarrassing.
Yeah, they I heard they're going to change it up obviously for the NHL jerseys, they're going to have to follow certain protocols and have a higher standard than your replica jersey. But hopefully that'll keep them in line. But for us as card stores, we're a bit worried because they want to. There's a lot of people saying that they're going to kind of try and be the Amazon of the hockey card world.
Right.
They could definitely monopoly and like maybe cut us out a bit. Like where people can buy all their stuff, and we wouldn't be exclusive to the hobby boxes. Maybe they can buy directly from Fanatics, and Fanatics has their whole, we talked about sports cards breaks. Well, you can do Fanatic breaks and go on their page, and then it's going to be, bigger. I can't compete with a budget of Fanatics to do breaks, right. And people are going to be attracted to that. So the future is, we'll see what happens, but they're a huge player.
You know what I'll say? Give you a little bit of optimism here is that, I don't know, I feel like the sports card crowd, kind of old school, like they like the trade shows, they like the in-person, they like the showroom feel. You don't get that online, it's
a lot of people ask me why I have a brick and mortar store and why wouldn't I just be online like everybody else in other professions. And you know what, I work every day with the collectors and my clients, and there's nothing better than walking into a shop, seeing the card physically, interacting, going on a Friday afternoon, stopping after work, having a nice long chat about it. We can chat about who's doing good, who's not, why this is worth this and that. And it's just it's a hobby. The word hobby has to be said over and over again. The people that try to make a business outside of like a business like myself, just as a sideline, I don't want to say they ruin it, but sometimes they take the fun out of it. And I think it's important that we all take a step back and remember that it's a hobby and we need to love the hobby. Yes, it's gotten expensive. It has. It hurts for sure. But I think there's different ways of collecting. You don't have to go after all the big stuff and put yourself in trouble. So you just got to adjust with the times, really.
Yeah. So speaking of having some fun, let's do it. I almost jumped the gun there. Let's do it. Talk to me.
Yeah.
Talk to me. Talk football cards to me because the season is about a week and a half away.
Yeah.
We're just about 9 days away.
Yeah. So football, and you know what? There might be some questions for you in here. Right now, there's a few teams out there where the starting quarterback is up in the air. Mm-hmm. So this is where you get a lot of chatter between collectors on, am I going to invest on this guy? Is he going to be benched? Is he going to start? Is he going to start one game, blow it, and then the other guy's going to come in? Is Trey Lance going to be a superstar with his new team? Is he just going to back up? And what's all that's the chatter right now. All the new rookies that are drafted, let's say that the top 5 quarterbacks, are they going to be starters? Who's going to start? Who's going to play well? Do they have a chance of making the playoffs? So it's really as the week goes by. This week again, I think preseason, regular season starts next week.
Next Thursday.
Yeah. So this next week is going to be all about that, and people want to not jump the gun, but people want to get it before Richardson goes and wins 5 in a row,
Yeah. Well, it's fun. It's funny because I'm even going to look to, just because we were talking before, like how there's not real that generational player in this draft class. Let me tell you, and I'm sure you're on top of this because, you're in the biz, who am I? But man, oh man, like pre-order tons of boxes of NFL cards for next year because Caleb Williams, man, he's the for those who don't know, he's the number one projected number one overall pick. People are comparing him to Patrick Mahomes already. They're saying he's a combination of Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, and Lamar Jackson. And for all the hockey fans that don't watch a lot of football, that's a pretty good company to be molded into one guy into.
Yeah. I already started with some I think it was university or college or university cards. I'm looking to buy some Archie Manning. So I don't know. Manning was always my guy as a Colts fan, and so I'm going to be watching him and seeing how that goes. I mean, the genes are good there, so we'll see.
Yep. So let's before we wrap it up, we got one more thing to cover here. Preseason hockey also just around the corner. It's still a couple weeks away, but it's never too early. I mean, hey, we're doing a hockey show in the middle of July just a couple weeks ago, so never too early. So tell me, in preseason, obviously there's the extremes of like Connor Bedard, let's say. Yeah, and if he goes out in his first preseason game and he, scores 8 goals, like that price is going to the moon.
Yeah.
But what other effects can preseason hockey have, and what are some things that people should watch for?
Well, line combinations, who they're going to play with is very important, or people they like to forecast. To give you an example, and I don't even know where this guy is anymore. A couple of years ago, a rookie card of Ty Ratty. You remember him?
Oh man, it's like
exactly.
I know the name. It's like I know the name, but I could have. You put a gun to my head. I'm taking a 1 in 32 chance.
So anyways, he was projected to be like he he ended the season before on a good note, and he was expected to start the season with Connor McDavid and Draisaitl in Edmonton, and it just didn't. After about, I don't even know if he started or after 5 games, it didn't go well, but we just never heard of the guy, and he just kept going down, and now I don't hear of him at all. It's things like that. People project that his card will go up like significantly, but then it can crash. Or you can buy a guy that you, in the back of your mind, you're like, man, this guy is really good. You know, he's going to play in the second line this year, but if there's an injury on the big line, he gets bumped up, just produce. So you gotta, you know, a lot like the stock market, you gotta keep on top of it. You gotta watch for the line combinations. You gotta watch some preseason and note the highlights. You gotta watch, you know, all the good things that are happening. You gotta, you know, it's really paying attention. And I can't say it enough. The best collectors that have the best collections, and if you want to make money, the ones that make the most money are the ones that pay the most attention. If you love the sport, you watch the sport and follow it, you're gonna know it. Just like winning your fantasy football. If you don't follow, you're pretty much dead if you don't follow.
Yeah. I'm getting nervous. I got oh my god, did it just start downpouring out here? But yeah, I'm getting nervous. I got 3 drafts coming up. I got 2 on the same day. I get this. I was supposed to have, because of, you know, one league is we're only 10 teams, but everyone's got a co-manager. So you got to, you know, manage 20 people's schedules. Yeah. And then my other league, we're a 12-man league. Most people have partners. So like call it, you know, another 20. I basically, the only window that this fit, I had 2 drafts simultaneously. Would have had to been on the phone with one, been in the room with another, zooming into one draft, the other one's on Yahoo. It was just craziness. It ended up getting regulated, and you know, we fixed the situation, thankfully, for my mental health. But yeah, good luck to everyone out there in their fantasy football.
Yeah. So yeah, it's
all right. So yeah, just before we end off, any special things going on at the store coming up? What's in the pipeline?
So September 13th. So that's like in 2 weeks, Bowman Chrome Baseball, probably the hottest release for baseball this year, Bowman Chrome 2023. As far as hockey goes, it's a bit quieter right now. We got our first release of MVP, but that's a lower end one. So once we get into October, November, that's when we'll get more into the hockey stuff. Especially in November will be the release of season 1, series 1. They're telling me that Connor Bedard will be in series 2, which will only be in February, but he might have some cards in series 1. So I will keep everyone posted with checklists as they come out, but the checklists don't usually come out until a few weeks before the release. So it's only speculation for now. If you want the Connor Bedard Series 2, I really suggest that people jump on the pre-release stuff to save some money and make sure that you get it, because when it drops, it's going to be hot and it's going to go fast.
Oh, big time. I envy the guy who's going to be opening that, you know, bought a pack of cards for $10, $13, and he just like swipes away 3 cards, and in the middle is going to be a Connor Bedard card. That's going to be crazy. Tornado Chris, thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right, that was the SIG Podcast Tuesday edition. I will be back here on Friday night for you. Tony's back tomorrow.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the SIG Podcast with Tony Marinaro on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts. The SIG Podcast is brought to you by Energy Transportation Group, driven to be different. LaVie.tv, embrace your true nature. And Playground, your premier gaming destination.